Beneath the sculpted stone faces of her colossal statues lies the real story of a god's wife who becomes Pharaoh. Her name is Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut's ascent from god's wife to king is fraught with politics and revenge. Hatshepsut inherits the title of God's wife from her grandmother, the first known God's wife in history. And she learns to wield power as daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and his principal wife. But when Hatshepsut is 14 years old, her father dies. Thutmose II, the son of Thutmose I, with a lesser wife, takes the throne. Thutmose II is not of pure royal blood, so he marries Hatshepsut, his half-sister, to legitimate his reign. He dies after ruling for 12 unexceptional years. Then his son from another wife is next in line to inherit the throne. Too young to rule alone, Thutmose III needs a co-regent. Hatshepsut, his stepmother, seizes the chance. Family connections create the opportunity for Hatshepsut to be co-ruler. But according to Dr. Gay Robbins, it's her position as God's wife that seals the deal.
God's wife was Hatshepsut's favorite title. The office of God's wife carried with it tremendous ritual and economic importance. The God's wife had to interact directly with the deity in the temple in a way which otherwise only the king would do. And so it's likely that she was able to use this position as a springboard to her ultimate assumption of the kingship.
One of the prerogatives of kings was building obelisks. Hatshepsut's father, Thutmose I, did it before her. But Hatshepsut's obelisks tower over her father's. At the heart of the Temple of Karnak, Hatshepsut erects two of the largest obelisks in Egypt, one of which still stands today. Each weighed over 360 tons, and the one left standing towers 90 feet over the surrounding temple complex. At the top, which in ancient times would have been coated in radiant electrum, a mixture of silver and gold, is carved Amun, placing the crown of Pharaoh on Hatshepsut. And just below, second only to her coronation as Pharaoh, is an image of Hatshepsut with Amun in the traditional God's wife embrace. Hatshepsut went so far to project the image of a good pharaoh to her people that she even wore the pharaonic beard and dressed like a man. And she fulfilled the destiny of pharaohs by building. While the early pharaohs constructed pyramids for their burial chambers, Hatshepsut is one of the first pharaohs to build her funerary temple in Thebes and the Valley of Kings. Hatshepsut's Deir el-Bahari would have been reached by an avenue lined with sphinxes, sacred fountains, and myrrh trees. Among ancient Egyptians, the temple was simply known as Djeser Djeseru, splendor of splendors. Today, the Egyptian and Polish archaeological mission is restoring the temple using many of the techniques the ancient Egyptians would have used to construct it. But to Polish Egyptologist Miroslav Barwick, the restoration reveals a startling twist in the biography of Hatshepsut.
The Deir el-Bahri temple is essentially a political and religious biography of Hatshepsut's life. It depicts her birth into the pharaonic dynasty, her co-regency with Thutmose III, and then her kingship. But what's interesting is that after her death, late into Thutmose III's reign, her official history was rewritten. Her representations were attacked, and officially she doesn't exist as a king anymore.
Mysteriously, after Hatshepsut dies, Deir el-Bahri and her other monuments throughout Karnak are attacked. Her images, and even her royal name, are chiseled away. Some Egyptologists explain this defacement as an attempt by Thutmose III to exact revenge on the evil stepmother who purportedly stole his throne. But the discovery of a new Hatshepsut monument, with her name and image intact, is revealing a far different story. Today, a team of French and Egyptian archaeologists is restoring a small temple they call the Red Chapel. It is a monument that was disassembled before Thutmose III had a chance to deface and destroy it.
Over a period of almost 100 years, 350 blocks were discovered in the foundations of the third pylon of Karnak. And these 350 blocks have been reconstructed during the past 3 years. And the reconstruction of the Red Chapel of Hatshepsut is nearly finished.
In reassembling the Red Chapel, Larcher and his team have discovered that the monument was started by Hatshepsut, but completed by her stepson. Many of the images commissioned by Hatshepsut celebrate her co-regency with Thutmose III. Her cartouche appears next to his, and they even stand side by side as they conduct religious rituals. Just after Hatshepsut's death, Thutmose III adds 2 rows to the top of the chapel, depicting his own coronation. Below, he leaves the images of Hatshepsut's coronation intact. If Thutmose III was waiting for Hatshepsut's death to exact revenge on his evil stepmother, then why does he complete the Red Chapel and leave her images and royal name untouched? Clearly, he attacks her name and images later in life. So what happens to change his heart? Near the end of his reign, Thutmose III fathers an heir to the throne named Amenhotep II. As Thutmose III approaches the last part of his life, Amenhotep II is still too young to rule alone. It appears he will need a co-regent. With the memory of Hatshepsut's glorious reign still fresh in the minds of Egyptians, Thutmose III fears that another woman might usurp the throne from his son. To ensure Amenhotep II's ascension, Thutmose III tries to eliminate Hatshepsut's accomplishments by erasing her from history.
Thutmose probably didn't want his successor to be encumbered by royal women in the same way as he'd been overshadowed by Hatshepsut. And therefore, he deliberately destroyed Hatshepsut's memory to prevent her becoming a role model for some of the current royal women.
As further assurance against a woman taking the throne, Thutmose III attacks the power base from which Hatshepsut launched her ascent to Pharaoh, the position of God's wife. By the time Amenhotep II becomes king, the title of God's wife is largely ceremonial. It could not be used by women to achieve political power, at least for now.